It's almost technically summer. I think it's still spring, although here in Texas, we can't really tell the difference. And this feels like the first summer with new updated travel guidelines, so I have a feeling a lot more people are going to be traveling this summer, so I wanted to tell you how you can do it a bit better for the planet. I'm actually about to head out for a trip right now, and I have another one coming up later this summer, so it's perfect timing for me. And I want to say a huge thank you to Google for sponsoring this video to show how they can help make traveling more sustainably so easy. Honestly, a lot of the prep to travel in a more sustainable, eco-friendly, better for the planet type of way needs to start before you ever leave your home, in the planning and specifically in the packing. I always say this when talking about traveling, but packing light is going to be easier for you and easier on the planet. Less weight equals less emissions. Like, I have this super lightweight jacket that also folds up into a neck pillow, which is just a life hack in and of itself to get a jacket on the plane without having to pack it. So something I do because of sustainability that I think I would do even if I didn't care about sustainability is using bar soaps and shampoos, especially for travel. If you are flying, you don't have to worry about the ounces needed for TSA and meeting all of those requirements, but also because even if you're not flying, you don't have to worry about things spilling in your suitcase and ruining the only clothes you have packed for the next week or so. Also, when it comes to packing and talking about what we're going to be wearing when we're traveling, try to avoid single-use outfits. I've seen this pop up a lot in the social media era. People buy outfits to wear on vacation, and it's the type of dress or ensemble that really doesn't fit into your regular life, and so you're only really gonna wear it on this trip. That's not a sustainable way to do things, and we don't want to be participating in that, so avoid buying items just for your vacation. That's pretty wasteful. I will say I do have an upcoming trip where I do need a couple outfits that are outside of my norm, but I'm gonna try to rent something for those dinners when I'm there. That's definitely a more sustainable option, and if you wanna see more about clothing rental services, let me know. I can talk more about it on here, on the gram, on TikTok, all those things. You also, of course, need to pack reusables. A lot of the waste we generate when we're traveling is because we're on the go, right? Water bottles, get your reusable. Coffee cups, keep your reusables. Plastic utensils, you can pack reusable versions, and I personally always bring a little tiffin with me for any to-go food that I might get. And that's on packing more sustainably. What else can you do before you leave your home to ensure that you are having a more sustainable trip? Let's think about conserving energy before we leave our homes. My Nest thermostat is over here on the wall, which this thing is super handy actually when you leave your house, even if you're not traveling like long term, even if you just leave the house for a little while, it can detect it and it will kick it into away mode so that it's not consuming energy while we're gone. And I can't just turn off the AC while we're gone. Let me tell you why. Because I have plants that will literally die if it gets too hot in here. And I have that little guy who would not like it if it got up to 90 degrees in here, which it could because this is Texas and it's already really hot. So I have eco temps set up on here, and when it detects that we're gone, it automatically kicks into my eco temps that are really high so that we're using a lot less electricity to heat and cool. Well, who are we kidding? We're not heating this house. To cool the house while we're gone. And Google has also enabled a new service called Nest Renew, which offers a suite of new features that help you support a clean energy future right from your home. I think this program is really cool because in Texas we have a mixed grid, right? We have renewables, we have dirtier forms of energy, and depending on the demand at whichever time, we have to use more dirty energies when we're in high demand compared to when it's not so high demand. And what Nest Renew allows you to do with your thermostat is utilize the clean energy when demands aren't so high, if that makes sense. So for instance, in California, where solar is plentiful, midday can be the cleanest time, but in Texas, where we utilize a lot of wind, early morning is usually the cleanest time. So it will utilize those low demand times to cool my home so that when we're in high demand times, we're not consuming energy from the grid, therefore creating a demand for the more dirtier forms of energy. But what's really cool about this is by utilizing your home to use energy when it's cleaner, you're contributing to a demand for renewables, which is my favorite part of the Nest Renew program. Our city also offers another program where we will use less energy during peak hours, so we're enrolled in that program, and on top of it now we're enrolled in the Nest Renew program. And the Nest Renew program will allow us to see when we are sourcing from non-renewable versus renewable sources. I love how effortless my Nest is in general, and the Nest Renew on top of that, the basic plan is completely free to enroll. And when you use these different eco features, you collect Nest Renew leaves, and when you hit certain leaf milestones, you're actually able to help help direct those Nest Renew funds to organizations and nonprofits. So the Nest Renew program is very cool because it's free to enroll, but just My Nest in general, you also collect leaves when you use eco temperatures and all the different eco features, and then you get an email every month telling you how you rank amongst your neighbors, and I'm just saying we're always in the top 10% for saving energy. Before you leave your house, something we always try to do is go through the fridge and pantry, look at anything that's going to be going bad, and ideally you'll do this a few days before you leave so that you can eat that stuff up, but if you don't, make sure you compost it because it's so nice to come back to a nice clean house and fridge. Currently my fridge is essentially empty because we did a really good job this week of making sure we ate everything. I mean, look at this. That's about as empty as my fridge has ever looked. So making sure that you're planning for when you're gonna be gone, making sure there's no food waste because we all know food waste contributes quite a bit to climate change. We don't wanna be doing that. Some of my favorite things to make with just random stuff in your fridge when you're trying to use it up before you leave is pasta sauces. You can throw so many veggies and like DIY your own pasta sauce, throw tomatoes in there, spinach in there, a little bit of dairy-free heavy cream. Smoothies are also really good for this, basically a soup but cold. Stir fries, you can throw anything together in a stir fry with a couple sauces and it's great. And freeze stuff, utilize your freezer. I put a whole bag of spinach in the freezer earlier today. Whatever it takes to reduce food waste, okay? That's what we're here for. Something else we do before we leave is make sure all of our light switches are turned off, right? Like that light stays on because it's for the garden. Something else we already did before we leave is make sure all of our power strips are turned off and all of our electronics that aren't going to be used are unplugged. So I'm gonna unplug my blender because something called vampire energy actually sucks quite a bit of your energy usage if you weren't aware. So obviously doing that is going to save electricity, greenhouse gas emissions, and money. Never forget. So we've got how to pack, we've got how to conserve energy before we leave the house, we've got how to not waste our food. Obviously a huge part of the footprint of traveling is how you're getting places or your mode of transportation. In the US and in Texas especially, mass transit is simply not feasible, which is super unfortunate because I love taking the train personally. Like if it was accessible to me, I honestly wouldn't care if it was more expensive because I love the experience of not having to go through the freaking airport, not having to drive because driving is dangerous and I can't get work done while I'm driving. I love getting on the train, having Wi-Fi and being able to get stuff done while I'm traveling than just having to sit here and look at the road. Sincerely a Texan. We need mass transit. For this trip, none of those options are available whatsoever because we're going to the middle of nowhere because my dad has been asking me for years to see Yellowstone. And if you've ever been to Yellowstone, you realize there is nothing around there. So we're driving. But to make it more eco-friendly, of course, all of us are going in the same car, 4 adults, 4 suitcases, and a wheelchair, 1 car, and we're going to be using Google Maps to make those routes as eco-friendly as possible. So eco-friendly routing prioritizes lower fuel consumption by measuring things like the topography. So hills along each route is really important because obviously going uphill requires more fuel. They take into account the traffic to avoid things like idling, stop and go, which is not as efficient for fuel as maintaining a speed. And this is very much a game I play with my car because I drive a hybrid, so I can watch as my battery charges and depletes, prioritizing things like not losing your momentum. It all has become very much a game to me. Fuel conservation and efficiency. Google estimates that eco-friendly routing has the potential to prevent over 1 million tons of carbon emissions per year. That's the equivalent of removing 200,000 cars from the road. And I think it's important to acknowledge that these features don't make driving a sustainable thing to do, but in today's society, like I said, where it's not built for other forms of transportation, it's a way to make driving when you need to more eco-friendly. Aside from that, I do think it's a good option to offset travel if you have the ability to do so. I personally offset my entire carbon footprint, which I've talked about many times, and I have a very, very deep dive video I'm currently working on that will be out very soon, all about carbon offsetting, what to look out for, what's okay, what's not. So if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned. Okay, so recapping. How to pack, how to prepare your home to be less wasteful while you're away, different modes of transportation and how they're good and bad for the planet. Where you choose to stay also has to do a lot with the environmental impact of your travels overall. Specifically for our trip, which is to Yellowstone, like I said, my dad has been asking me to go for so long, and I know that these spaces are public spaces now, owned by the government in the US, so it doesn't feel like we're really interrupting any other sort of cultures or established populations, but the truth is that land was once stolen from the rightful inhabitants of that land, and so I think when you travel to different places just just for Yellowstone being an example, it's important to be aware and acknowledge your part in that system. The indigenous peoples who rightfully occupied the land that is now Yellowstone are multiple different tribes, which I'll put here on the screen for you. Some of them are hard for me to pronounce. Some of them I actually have family lineage to. I think being aware of these things is where it starts to righting these very clear historic wrongs. And aside from that, making sure that we are caring for the land that we are going to visit, because when you're traveling, that's what you are, a visitor in someone else's home. So what are some things we can do to make our impact on wherever we're traveling to lighter in those ways, in where we're staying and where we're spending our money once we get there? Since my trip is focusing again on public lands and a lot to do with like trails and things, it's very important to say stay on trail. I think a lot of people don't realize this, and since I'm going on this trip with people who are not regular public park goers, I think it's important to acknowledge that those trails are there for a reason. It is a dedicated space that we have actually made a scar, an impact on the planet, on the land, so that we can utilize it to see things in the park to make them more accessible. That doesn't then mean that just because it's public land, you should traverse over all parts of the land. That harms the vegetation a lot of times, in turns interrupting those ecosystems that we're going there to visit. And pack it out, never leave trash in nature. I mean, I shouldn't have to be telling you this, but don't litter. Also, if you have animals or anything like that with you, always clean up after them. And even if it's not yours, if you see trash along the trail, why not make the extra effort to clean it up? Aside from the trails, supporting locally owned businesses while you're traveling is a great way to give back to the community that you're visiting. I think it should go without saying that when you're traveling, avoid chain restaurants and things like that you could experience back home because you're somewhere else to experience something different. But in case you're not already aware as to why that's important, it's because when you spend money at a local business, that money actually stays within that economy, therefore propping up the economy and the local community that you're choosing to visit, and therefore giving back to them. Also, be aware of the place that you're visiting if it's a culture outside of your own. So for instance, my cousin is having her 10-year wedding anniversary in Hawaii this year. She got married in Hawaii 10 years ago. This trip has literally been planned ever since then. And so I've been reading a lot about how to respect the culture, things the locals are and are not okay with, what businesses are actually ran by Hawaiians instead of just going and supporting people who essentially took over the different systems and land and all those sort of things just to profit off of the land. It's not really something I want to be supporting as a sustainable and ethical person. I followed so many different creators who talk about the problems and learned about organizations I can volunteer for while I'm there. And I think as a visitor to anyone's home, land, culture, all those sort of things, the least we can do before we go is educate ourselves on what we're going to. On this trip, we are going to be staying at a couple different hotels because it's a road trip, moving every night. And I used Google to choose the hotels because they actually now make it so much easier, you guys. This was so hard before Google added this feature on. So I chose these hotels because they have eco certifications from accredited independent organizations. And in the About section, you can learn more about the hotel's specific attributes like energy efficiency, water conservation, waste reduction, sustainable sourcing. It makes it easier for someone who is conscious of making these decisions. But imagine if you're looking at a page on Google full of a bunch of different hotels and one or two of them has eco certifications. It makes it so much easier for your average person to make the more sustainable choice, which I love. But I do want to say that all of this stuff has to do with how independently and as individuals we can make more sustainable choices. And I just wanted to say that while I was prepping this video with Google, they made it very clear to me that they do not want me to preach to you on this video as if everything is on our shoulders. They wanted me to make it very clear that they do not believe that the burden of saving the planet should be on individual shoulders, which I very much respected. Not many brands are willing to say that. They're aware that as a major company, they have a big responsibility, and we talked in depth about how they already have made meaningful changes and things that they are still working on. They've been carbon neutral in their operations since 2007, far ahead of most major brands, and they are on the way to achieving net zero by 2030. I think this is very cool because they are taking accountability for their footprint, but then also what their business does, they're making that more eco-friendly. So I talked recently in a video about brands that wanted to pay me to lie and that the problem was a lot of them were running campaigns for being more eco-friendly without actually addressing the impact that their business has on the planet. Well, Google is a search engine, so the way their business could literally make sustainable changes is guiding us through the process of searching for more eco-friendly things. That's literally what they do. And we love to see it from a brand as big as Google. Okay, please skip the souvenirs. I really don't think this has to be said, but like my biggest driving force to living more sustainably is shopping and buying a lot less. It's no different with souvenirs. I think that it's okay to purchase like 1 or 2 things, but listen, I've recently been traveling with people who are not so eco-conscious, and the amount of things they buy, it blows my mind. Honestly, let me go get you the thing I bought on this trip that I'm still debating on giving my brother-in-law or not. Hold on. So this is a bowl that was actually made by an indigenous woman in Estes Park. So this is a perfect example when I say support local artisans, support their work, not mass-produced things that didn't even come from the place where you're actually visiting. And I find what's really cool is when you get one thing that actually has a story behind it, a meaning, is unique, you're happy to just get one thing. I also bought something called Navajo tea from a woman who was selling it because she was growing it literally on the side of the road. And that stuff just feels a lot more meaningful to me, and I feel perfectly content with only have bought like 2 things on this trip. And when you're traveling, definitely go digital. I had to tell the people I was traveling with so many times that we did not need a physical map because we could download it on the National Park Service app, or some of the parks we were lucky enough to have signal in some places. Just look at your phone. You already have a map. Also pamphlets, like if you've ever been to a rest area, again, people I was traveling with love rest areas for some reason. All of that information is on the internet, and you can actually research who owns and operates and the reviews of that business instead of just looking at a piece of paper about it. Finally, also, if you are flying, boarding passes on your phone so that you don't have to print them. I had to teach my parents how to do that recently. It's very simple to just text yourself a boarding pass, put it on your wallet on your phone, scan it when you get to the airport, and you aren't gonna lose your phone, whereas you might lose your boarding pass. And remember that connecting with nature is incredibly important as a human being, but very much as an environmentalist. I find that most people's beginning of sustainability and sustainable living and why they care about the planet usually starts with nature and experience in nature, or how humans have impacted nature, all those sort of things. And so to me, traveling is always a way to reconnect with the earth. And that doesn't mean that you have to drive halfway across the country. I only did that because it was my dad's I'm not gonna get emotional, but it was one of my dad's lifelong wishes. That can just literally mean going into your backyard. Like next weekend we're going tubing in one of the rivers here in San Antonio, and that's also a great way to connect with nature without really having to travel far. But I think overall one of the reasons I'm not going to give up travel is because I absolutely love to see nature and how vastly different it can be all across the world and the country. And so I will continue to do so, just a little bit better for the planet, which is what I'm hoping this video got across to you today. So thanks again to Google for sponsoring this video. I hope you guys enjoy the new features on Google. So helpful. And remember, until next time, you cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that you can do. Bye guys.